Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. I bought this top the other day because I loved the fabric and kind of thought it was going to look nice, but it's way too dowdy for me. It's got these big puffy sleeves. Puffy sleeves are not a good thing for me, and it kind of looks like a tent as well. I do like my summer tops to be flowy, but I don't think I need to be in a tent. So I'm thinking I may put some darts in on the front and back just to give it more shape. And I'm definitely going to take the elastic out. Hopefully I can just have nice big sleeves. If not, I'm going to have to see what else we can do. Come along and let's fix this top so I don't look so dowdy. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is remove these keepers. They're so annoying, and I don't hang my clothes up by those ribbons at all. I do keep them though, they'll be handy one day. So I'll turn this inside out and I'll open up the seam under the arm here to get rid of the elastic. Hopefully that's not stitched in. Oh, how annoying. They've actually sewn the elastic into the seam. All right, easy. I am going to chop that off. There's enough length in the sleeve itself for me to be able to do that. So if I just chop this off and then do a double folded hem, I reckon that's going to be all it needs. So right beside the seam here is where I'm going to start cutting, and I'll run the scissors right along that very edge to trim that off. That is a very big sleeve. I'll do the other one as well, and then all I'm going to do is a double fold hem. Okay, I'm going to quickly go and try this on. I'll iron the sleeves first, then I'm going to quickly try this on and just make sure I can actually live with just a really big flat hem. All right, so here's what I've done. I've just cut the elastic straight off the end of the sleeve, and I've gone and tried this on to see what options I have. Now, when I've tried this on, the sleeve was still way too long. My elbow is around about here, and I just think that it's too long, and this is actually too wide as well. So what I did is I've pinned this up, so that takes off about 1.5 to 2 inches at the bottom here. And I'm thinking that if I restitch this along here, trim off that excess, that will lessen the amount of fabric that I have in the sleeve. I'm also going to cut this up all the way across here. So from this end, I'll cut it back about 2.5 centimeters to 1 inch. And then I'll cut this straight up here, probably in line with this pattern that I've got on the fabric, because I found that it went out too far this way, but it wasn't as bad under the arm. So that's what I'm going to do for the sleeve. I'm going to stitch straight across there to take off 1.5 inches. I'll do that equally on both sleeves, and then once I've done that, then I'm going to cut all the way up here. I've also gone and pinned up some darts on the back and front to see how this would look with darts in it. And because this has got a big square pattern across the back and front, I'll show you the front. If I put darts in here, that's going to distort these little squares. So I'm not going to put darts in the front of the blouse, but I will put them in the back. And then what I'm going to do is take it in on the side as well. So let's sort out the sleeve first. I'm going to bring the fabric together under the arm, line everything up evenly, and fold the garment in half. I'll lay out the sleeves nice and flat. And this is where I was playing around with folds to see how much I wanted to take off. I'm going to take off more than that. And I basically can't wear this top, or I won't wear this top the way it looks, so anything I do with it is going to be an improvement on the way it looks on me at the moment. Okay, that's all lined up nice and even at the top and the bottom. I'm just going to chop away. So I'll just line up my 1 inch at the bottom there, and then this I'm going to bring it up quite a bit. So I'm just going to go straight across here. I might straighten that up a bit more though. Here we go. All right, that gives me a nice even edge there to do my hems. From the corner here, I'm going to taper this out until it measures 1.5 inches in from that seam at the bottom. So I'll basically just come up along like this, and once I've restitched this, then I can go and hem the sleeve. I'll quickly go and stitch that, and then we'll get the sleeve ready for hemming. So that is the sleeve reshaped along here, and I think that's looking better already. I now want to go and hem this. So what I'm going to do, rather than measuring 2 folds, it's a very lightweight fabric, and rather than measuring the folds twice and stitching it, what I will do is go to the machine and sew a row of stitching about 1/4 inch in from the raw edge. When I've done that, I'll use that as a guide to fold the fabric over on that stitching line, and then I will fold it over again and re-stitch it. I find this is much quicker to do than having to measure for 2 hems. It also prevents the fabric from stretching, because when we fold this fabric over, we have a tendency to stretch it out when we play around with it. So if I just sew straight over that, that'll secure the fabric and it'll make it easier to fold and not be stretched out too much. I use this technique often when I'm re-hemming shirts or blouses at the shop. I will actually just use the edge of my presser foot as my stitching guide. Once you get back to the beginning, all you need to do is fold the fabric on that stitching line. Can I find a blue section? We'll fold the fabric on that stitching line, and I'll finger press that in place. So that row of stitching that I've done will give me the nice straight edge of my hem, and then I'll fold that up again, and there I will have a really nice 1/4 inch hem. And I'll just do that as I'm going around at the machine, so you don't have to go and use pins or clips this way. So if I start under the arm here, and I'll just finger press that, fold that over again, and pop the presser foot down and start sewing. And then as I go, I just keep pulling the work in front of me, and I can do that more confidently now without damaging the fabric, because I've sewn that row of safety stitching there, and it's not going to stretch it out of shape. But I've just folded the 2 folds around using that row of stitching as my guide, and continue on. And as I go around, I'll just keep bringing the fabric forward, folding the fabric over on that stitching line, tuck the rest under, and continue. And when you get to the beginning, the rest of the fabric will just automatically fold under. And that's done. I just need to press it. I'll do the same for the other sleeve now. All right, that is the sleeve finished. I will go and press this later. Now I'm going to turn this inside out again. I've decided to put darts on the back only. Separate the front and back and line this up along the side seam to find the centre of the back. So this is the back of my blouse. That's the fold on the centre back. And between the seam line and the centre, I'm going to place a dart. So I'm going to measure the distance there. That's 13 inches. You can actually put your darts wherever you like, but I'm going to put mine in the centre. That is at 6.5 inches, which is around about here. Then you'll find where your waist is. And my waist, well, my waist spreads out all over this area, but let's stick with around about the centre of my waist, which is just there. So for me, that is, let's go 11 inches from the bottom, and then we have this straight line here. I'm going to line up my side seam again, lay that out nice and flat. And this blouse doesn't have a tapered side seam, so I'm going to use the straight edge as my guide. I'm going to run a straight line along my seam and mark a line parallel to that seam. The waistline is along here. From the waistline, I'm going to measure down 14 centimetres, which is about 5.5 inches. And from the waist up, I'm going to measure 12 centimetres, or about 4 3/4 of an inch. And this is a measurement that I usually use when I'm creating darts in something that I've self-drafted. So I've got 12 centimetres from here to the waist, and then from the waist down toward the hip, I've got 14 centimetres. I'll mark a straight line going all the way along, and then from the waistline, I'm going to measure out 2 centimetres or 3/4 of an inch on each side. And then I'm going to mark a diagonal line from the bottom up to the centre. I'll do that on both sides. And then from the centre up to the top. Then I will repeat this on the other side of my blouse at the back. Okay, now we can pin the darts together. Separate it from your front. Fold the fabric along that centre line of the dart. And then we're going to pin. So from this bottom, pin up along the dart. And you want that to line up with the line that you've marked on the other side. So that's nicely lined up there. Continue on until you've pinned all of that together. And we can go to the machine. And so from the point down to the widest point here, and then taper that back in again until you get to the bottom. And we'll do the same for the other side. All right, let's sew up those darts. So I'm starting right at the very tip of the dart. And as I move my pins, I'll stitch right along that line I've marked. I'll continue on until I get to the widest point, and then I'll start tapering back in again. And then I'll come back down to nothing. And there is our dart completed. Let's do the other one. Okay, this is the front of the blouse. It's still very tenty. And these are the darts that we have at the back of the blouse now. So you can see that that's come in quite nicely. I'm going to go and try this on and then see what I need to do by way of either placing darts in the front, or if I can just take in the side seams, that would be much better for me. I've tried this top on. Oh, I forgot to check how the sleeves look. They must look okay because I would have noticed them if they were terrible. The dart at the back I'm really happy with, and it's still too baggy at the front. It really only needs the same amount as this dart to make the top look a little bit better. But as I said, I can't stitch into here because it will distort the pattern. But I'm going to do something that dressmakers across the world will cringe at, and I normally would too, but I've never done this, and I've just come up with an idea to kind of create a dart on the side seam without having to create a dart. So what I've got here is the side seam. I'll lay out the fabric nice and flat, and the fabric, the excess fabric that I have at the front here, I'm just going to line everything up so that this sits nice and flat. The seam along the bottom here is nice and flat. And then with everything centered nicely, the excess fabric that is at the front is actually folding over to the side here. And I've just had this idea, and I don't know if it'll work, but rather than measuring and shaping this, I'm going to restitch right along this seam line here, which will stitch over this folded edge that's hanging out. Look, I know you're all screaming at me, but I'm going to give this a go. It should work. It tapers back in along the bottom just like it did with the dart. And if I can match that up, that means I can have a dart on my side seam without distorting the print on the front. I know everyone's yelling at me. I can hear the screams, but I'm going to see how this goes. So I'll pin right along that stitching line. If this doesn't work, I can always undo it. It's not like I'm cutting any fabric yet. And to be fair, if I were watching somebody else doing this, I would be cringing and shouting, no, don't do this. But why can't I? I'm sure this will work. And if nothing else, it's actually going to give me a nice even back and front. And if I need to take in a little bit more, I can. I've also decided that I'm going to re-hem this blouse because it's too long. Because I'm only a medium height and I'm above medium in weight, I can't really pull off wearing a long blouse. It'll make me look more dumpy. So I'll shorten the blouse. I'm going to go and sew this up and see what happens. So I'll start near the bottom on this side where there isn't any fabric being tapered. And as I go along, I'm just going to continue stitching straight on that previous stitching line, which in theory will taper the fabric underneath. And obviously I need to stop where the armhole is because I can't go any further than that. So I've created a dart on this side here. I'm really curious to see what happens, but I'll do the other side first. So along here I'm starting from the armhole, and I'll just again sew straight along the stitching line. So from the back it doesn't look like I've done anything here. If you have a look at the seam on the front, we've got a taper that's just like the dart we've done on the back. I'm going to go and try this on and see what happens. Okay, so that has worked much better than I had thought it was going to. So I think that was a really good option. I looked at the sleeves as well, and the length of the sleeve I love. It's a really good length now. But I do think it's actually too big at the bottom of the sleeve. So what I'm going to do at the bottom of the sleeve here is just realign this. You can see it comes out, goes all the way like that. It's kind of like a bat wing look, and I'm not fond of that. I've got my side seam along here. I'm going to straighten that up and come around and chop off that excess under here and just give that a more balanced curve. I'm also going to cut the hem. It needs to be about that much shorter, so that's about 1.5 inches, nearly 2 inches that I'm going to take off. And I'm also going to straighten the hem as well, all the way across. So when you're cutting this off, or when you're measuring, you want to make sure you leave enough of an allowance for your hem. I'm going to once again be doing the same thing I did on my sleeve. I'll run my presser foot against this cut line. That will bring a stitching line about 1/4 inch away, and the finished hem will be another 1/4 inch away from that. So there's 1/2 inch I'm going to be losing once I cut this fabric. So I'm going to hem that, and I'll take in the armhole a little bit. This is one of the most common hems that I do for a customer's blouse. It's such a quick way of doing them too. And as long as you don't pull your fabric, you're not going to distort it. Just let it run through. And once again, I will fold the fabric on that stitching line. It doesn't matter so much if you pull on this, because you've already secured the fabric with the stitching, so you're not going to distort it. And then I'll fold that over one more time and start sewing. Next, I'm coming up under the arm just to taper that in a little more. And I'll do the same for the other side. Okay, I think I've done just about everything that I want to do to this. If it doesn't look any good now, I'm not going to worry about it. I'll just give it away. So I've got a couple of darts in the back there. I've also done those darts on the side, which I'm sure most of you are cringing about, but that's fine. I'm the one that has to wear it, so I can live with it. And I didn't end up doing the darts on the front because I didn't want to wreck the pattern. And the sleeve has been taken in at the bottom and also made shorter as well. And I've re-hemmed the top as well. Let's have a look and see if it's any better. So here we have it. It's a little bit windy out here, so I hope you can hear me. I've done lots of Coco. I've done several alterations to this top, and in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have purchased it at all. So it's not perfect. It's still a little bit puffy, but I need to be able to get it on over my shoulders as well. So I had to keep it that way. I've taken it up. It was quite a bit longer, and I think that on a person of my height and cuddliness, it makes me look a little bit more dumpy, so it was better to shorten the top. I've created some darts for the back here. It's still flowy, but it doesn't look like a circus tent anymore. And the shorter sleeves are much more comfortable like this as well, and getting rid of the elastic too. So that's it. I know that there are some people that are going to chase me down the street with pitchforks because I've gone and put a dart on the side. Look, it's my top. I wouldn't do that for a customer's garment, but for myself, it's perfectly fine. Anyway, I hope you found this video helpful, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.